I don't usually save strangers, especially not on Varetha, a planet drowned in toxic mist and ruled by vigilante law. But that night, when gunfire cracked through the 12th basement of an abandoned industrial complex, I reacted like a reflex wired deep from my years as a mercenary. Under the flickering lights piercing the plasma dust, I saw her, an alien woman with pale platinum-gray skin and a streak of black blood trailing down her thigh. She staggered, clutching her wound like she either felt no pain or had long surpassed the threshold of feeling. The 4 pursuers behind her were in full-body armor, wielding top-tier weapons, but they didn't move like professionals. Their first mistake, standing too close together. I shot without warning. 2 armor-piercing rounds hit the lead one square in the chest. The third turned just in time to flinch, but his plasma rifle's recoil threw him off. I swung a rusted steel pipe into the 4th's temple, a short grunt. Then silence. She was still upright, leaning against the wall, eyes unreadable. Was it caution or calculation? Weighing whether I was worth trusting. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice low and strange, like wind whistling through a cracked throat. I stepped closer, gun still level at my waist. "You're bleeding, and if I don't touch you, you've got 5 minutes left tops." She didn't reply, but her legs began to tremble, then gave out. I caught her before she hit the ground, one arm under her knees, the other behind her back. She didn't fight, didn't moan, just shut her eyes like she was clamping something deep inside, pain maybe, or a vow. I brought her back to my shelter, a sublevel once used for domestic freight transit, now abandoned due to toxic leaks. No cameras, no satellite feeds, no witnesses. I laid her on the folding cot and examined the wound. The round had torn through alien silk armor and lodged deep in her muscle. I pulled out a knife and sliced the suit from her thigh up to her hip, exposing the slow-bleeding gash. "Try not to enjoy this," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Never have," I replied, not pausing as I reached in with the forceps. As I stitched the wound shut with dissolvable thread, her eyes never left my face. It wasn't gratitude in her gaze. It was analysis, like I was a puzzle she had to solve before bleeding out. "What's your name?" I asked without looking up. "Zaina." "I'm Thorn." A brief silence, then her tone dropped colder. "And I forbid you from touching me again." I paused, staring down at the blood-soaked gauze, then met her eyes. "You're lying in my shelter. Your legs torn open. I'm the only reason you're not dead. I don't need your thanks, but if you think you're in any position to give orders, you should know I outgrew submission sometime in my teens." Zaina said nothing. She turned her face away. But for the first time, her arm fell from her abdomen. She no longer clutched the wound. I sat down on the metal chair opposite the cot, cleaning my gun with an oiled rag. Varetha's night always smelled of burnt ozone mixed with mist, as if the planet itself resented anything trying to survive. I kept my eyes on her, not out of curiosity, but instinct. Zaina didn't move like someone recently ambushed. Too calm, too precise. What bothered me most was how she looked at me, not like someone rescued, but like I had just walked into a game she'd been playing long before I arrived. An hour passed. I thought she'd fallen asleep, then her voice cut through the quiet. "You don't know who I am, do you?" I didn't turn. "You're wounded, that's enough. You touched me while my blood was still warm. In my kind, that can't be undone." I turned. "What does that mean?" She pushed herself upright, the dim light catching her silver-gray skin and making it shimmer like living metal. "I'm a first daughter of the Zalari bloodline, and you just accidentally created a permanent blood bond." I squinted. "What kind of bond?" "Biological, ancient. It forms when someone outside the royal line touches the body of a royal while her blood is still hot." I let out a short breath, more disbelief than laughter. "Well, that's unfortunate, but don't worry, I don't believe in tradition." Zaina stared into me. "My body does, and what's worse." She paused, her voice slowed. "I have 2 younger sisters, both unbound, and the blood bond law applies to them as well." The air thickened. I couldn't speak for a long moment. I just knew one thing. I just stepped into something far bigger than me, and possibly bigger than any war I'd ever crawled out of. I didn't sleep, not out of caution, but because I knew that once I closed my eyes, things would no longer be the same when I opened them. I sat against the shelter wall, back to the cold steel gun resting across my knees. The dim light above flickered occasionally, casting a pale shimmer on Zaina's silver-gray skin as she slept across the room. I had seen survivors of war curl up in nightmares, but not Zaina. Even wounded, even with dried blood still clinging to her, she slept with one hand open, chest rising steadily as if death had never brushed near. I didn't believe in blood bonds, but I believed in instinct. And instinct told me that my body had responded, not to her words but to her presence. Near dawn, as I turned to restart the plasma heater, her voice came from behind me. "You're not curious about anything." I didn't turn. "You're alive, that's enough." "It's not enough, Thorn." I stood and faced her. She was already sitting upright, blanket slipped down to her waist, the bandage around her thigh still faintly red, but her eyes alert, as if she'd never collapsed. "So what should I know?" She looked at me, long and deep, until I involuntarily stepped back. "You think I was joking about the blood law?" I stayed silent. "The bond has formed. I can feel your biorhythm even from across the room." Her voice wasn't threatening. It was a statement, calm, irrefutable, and my two younger sisters, they've already sensed it. Just then the outer perimeter motion sensor lit up, not blaring, just glowing. Someone was coming and stealthy enough to bypass a full trigger alert. Zaina glanced toward the door, not worried, more like she already knew. "Don't panic," she said. "If it's who I think it is, we're about to have company." I raised my gun. "What kind of company?" She didn't answer, but seconds later the heavy door slid open slowly. Two women stepped in, almost in unison. One was half a head taller than me, posture straight as a storm-forged blade, eyes sharp enough to make my finger twitch near the trigger. The other was shorter, her skin smooth like moonlit stone, face younger, hair tied to one side, gaze flickering between playful and predatory, like she was weighing whether I was worth tasting. Zaina looked at them. "Rael, Myri." The taller one, Rael, walked forward without waiting for an invitation. "The bond activated. We felt it before your blood cooled." "I didn't intend it," Zaina said. "But you didn't reject it either," Myri murmured with a smirk, stepping far closer to me than necessary. I looked up, gun still in hand. "You're Thorn," Rael said. "Not a bad name, but I don't judge men by names." I nodded. "I don't judge women by threatening glares, but one more step and I'll consider you a threat." Rael halted, smiling faintly. Not a soft smile, one of a warrior meeting someone who doesn't back down. "Then at least our sister chose well." I glanced at Zaina. I don't recall agreeing to be chosen at all. Zaina exhaled. "You don't have to agree. My blood chose. And under the Zalari binding law, when a royal daughter forms a living bond while wounded, every unbound bloodline member is pulled into it." I gritted my teeth. "And now I'm at the center of some ancient ritual, because I didn't let you die." "Not just that," Myri whispered, somehow already right beside me. "You touched her while she was still alive, still warm." I felt heat rise along my spine, not from anger but instinct. "Don't test me," I said quietly, but my voice lacked fury. It carried something else. Rael approached, not with threat, not with weapons, but her eyes pierced through me. "We're not here to force you into bed, Thorn." "Glad to hear it," I growled. "But if you think you can leave here without consequence, you're wrong." Zaina stepped in, eyes locked on mine, steady, dry, cutting like a blade without needing to swing. "You don't have to choose between me or them." I clenched my fists. "You have to choose all or none." In that moment, I didn't know what lit up inside me. Rage, fear, or something deeper I'd buried under years of battle and blood. But one thing I knew for certain. I was in the center of a bond I hadn't created, but if I stepped forward, I'd be the one to define it. She didn't touch me at first. Rael wasn't the kind of woman who spoke with fingers or suggestive glances. She spoke through distance and presence. Even standing several steps away, I could feel the pressure radiating from her like an underground current slipping beneath the skin, silent and dangerous. Zaina had returned to the bed, her wound freshly bandaged, but her eyes never left Rael. Meanwhile, Myri, the youngest, was lounging on the metal table, legs crossed, chewing on a hard piece of dried fruit like she was watching something amusing unfold. I slowly set the gun down, partly because I knew I wasn't going to use it tonight, not in the usual sense. The other reason was that I felt no need to keep anything between Rael and me. "Do you know why the blood-link system has survived until now?" Rael asked, her gaze never shifting. "All I know is that I just got dragged into it." "No one gets dragged in. People are chosen, and the blood chose you." I stepped forward, not to challenge her but to get closer to see if her eyes would blink. They didn't. "And if I refuse? You can leave the planet Zalari. Forever. You'll be erased from every biological registry we hold. But we remain bound, which means we'll still be hunted." Her voice wasn't raised. She didn't plead. It was like a verdict handed down in a sealed courtroom, cold and non-negotiable. I stood silent, staring at the three women whose skin all carried the same strange glow, the hue of royal genetics fused with ancient biology. "Rael," I said, "what do you want from me? The truth, not a command." Rael stepped closer, very close. "I don't want love. I don't need you moaning my name in sleep. I just need to know if the man my blood has bonded to is strong enough to stand between me and a blade." I swallowed hard. "You want to test me?" "No, I want you to touch me, not with your hands, with your refusal to back down." That last line wasn't a tease. It was instinctual command. I stepped forward, wordless. My hand touched her waist, not to pull, but to judge whether what I was about to embrace was a woman or a blade forged in the fire of war. Rael didn't flinch. Her chest pressed against me as her breath began to shift. I placed my forehead against hers, eyes still open. Her scent wasn't like any being I'd known, metal, stone, moss, and something wild, a species unrefined. When her lips met mine, it wasn't a kiss. It was an impact. Silent yet seismic. I pushed her against the wall, not violently, but enough for her back to hit the cold surface, for her breath to catch in her chest, and for her legs to instinctively wrap around my waist, whether to defend or to desire. She didn't moan but bit my lower lip, drawing blood. And I knew that blood was a vow. Her body was firm, honed like a warrior's, yet each movement flowed with a softness that felt designed for sensation, not surrender but fusion. I lifted her, her legs tightened around me, and she dragged her fingers across my neck as if tracing an ancient glyph. "Don't go soft," she whispered. "I don't know what soft is," I replied, and as I thrust deeper, not just with lips but with every part of me, she let out a strangled growl, primal and stifled. What surged between us wasn't just flesh. It was the convergence of two species, two identities, silently recorded and encoded by whatever biological system had awakened beneath our skins. When it was over, I didn't pull away. I kept her close, her back still pressed against the wall, our foreheads touching, my hand cupping the back of her neck as if letting go would make everything vanish. Rael said nothing. She just rested her cheek against my neck, breathing like she had never known how to before. When I finally lowered her, her legs trembled, just briefly, but I saw it. Rael stood still, not fixing her clothes, not catching her breath. She simply said, "Now I know, and I don't object." I nodded, no smile, because both of us knew this was only the beginning of a bond so dangerous and so beautiful it could never be outrun. I had touched Zaina because I had no choice. I'd faced Rael because both of us needed to test each other in a way only survivors of war could understand. But Myri, the youngest of the Zalari bloodline, was a different question entirely. A blade wrapped in silk, a smile that never told the truth, and I never knew how to deal with people like that. After the night with Rael, I washed my face in the old tech room. The steel sink was scratched, but water still flowed, tasting of raw minerals. The mirror reflected my eyes, faint red, tired but without regret. Beneath my skin I felt something changing, not feelings, biology. Some strange response from my body, like it was adapting to synchronize with something outside itself. I could sense Zaina from the next room, feel Rael like a fresh brand seared into my back, but Myri was nowhere. When I returned to the main room, the auxiliary lights were off, leaving only the bedside lamp and a soft blue glow from the control panel. Rael was asleep, or pretending to be. Zaina didn't move, her breathing steady. Then I saw Myri. She was sitting atop the power cabinet, legs swinging as if they weighed nothing. Light rose from below, casting her face in soft, youthful hues, almost harmless if not for her eyes. Honey-colored but so deep I couldn't tell where pupil ended and intention began. "What are you doing up there?" I asked quietly. "Watching you, the way you walk, the way you avoid looking at me too long." She tilted her head. "Interesting." I leaned back against the table edge, arms crossed. "You're not like the other two." "Because I don't want to be. I don't like to share traits with anyone." Myri hopped down like mist and walked over. Her steps made no sound, as if the floor didn't dare react to her touch. "And I definitely don't like sharing a man with my sisters." Her voice was soft but sharp enough to cut through silence. I growled low. "That wasn't my choice." "But you didn't walk away," she said, standing right before me, breath brushing my chin. "You didn't back out. You didn't refuse Zaina, and you didn't flinch with Rael." I saw no reason to deny what felt right. "And what about me?" I said nothing. Myri smiled. "See, I'm the real problem." She placed a finger on my chest, not pressing, just touching. My body betrayed me, reacting instantly. "You're afraid you'll want me but won't know why," she said, closing in, her chest nearly touching mine. "Because I don't fight, I don't command. I'm not weak enough to need protection." She leaned up, whispering near my ear. "I'm just here because I want to be." I wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her in. Not to dominate, just to confront her head-on. I don't trust people who want something but won't tell me how they plan to take it. She laughed like this. Myri kissed me, not hard, not hungry, like underground water seeping through long-dried stone. Her lips were moss-soft like morning mist. The first touch didn't last long, but it pulled the air from my lungs. When I responded, she moaned gently, not from surprise but satisfaction. Her body was unexpectedly supple, but in every stroke down my spine, I felt claws behind the silk. Myri didn't kiss to conquer. She kissed to discover. Like every movement of mine was a riddle her lips were meant to decode. She didn't rush. When I lifted her onto the console table, she looked at me, half-lidded eyes, breath trembling. "Do you know what kills the most men in Zalari legends?" she asked between kisses. I'd guess, opening up to the wrong one. Close, they thought they were leading, but really, they were being pulled. I tightened my grip around her waist. "And me." Myri bit her lip. "You don't need to be pulled, you're walking in on your own." When we joined, her cry came from the throat, like a blade dragged across wet skin. She tightened, then opened, moved like water and wind, never the same twice. She used more than her body, she used wit, and a sixth sense only species with emotion-triggered genes could possess. When it ended, I slumped against her neck, heart pounding like an alarm. Myri whispered, stroking my hair, "You're not like them, and because of that, I don't hate sharing you anymore." I looked at her, still reeling from that long drift. "It's not that I was chosen. I've already chosen all three of you, haven't I?" Myri nodded gently. "You just haven't admitted it yet." 3 women, 3 breaths, 3 personalities, 3 lives I had touched and could never untangle were sleeping in the same room with me. No one said a word about what we were, but the silence itself etched deeper than any declaration. Zaina lay on the main bed, blanket pulled up to her chest, her face tilted slightly toward me, breathing lightly as if she were camped on a battlefield. Rael wasn't asleep. She sat against the steel wall, one hand resting on the hilt of her blade, eyes open but focused on no one. And Myri, she lay pressed beside me, one leg draped over mine like it belonged there, and her heartbeat was so steady I found myself wondering, who's truly the experienced one here? I didn't sleep. I listened, because I could feel something had begun to shift beyond the control of the four of us in that room. And then the first signal came in at 04:12 local time. Not an alarm, not gunfire. A dry sound like bones snapping, echoing through the magnetic pulse sensors in the outer corridor. At the same time, the signal monitor blinked red, but made no sound. The enemy was smart enough not to trip the station's aging alarms, but not smarter than me. I sat up, gently moved Myri aside like lifting a feather, and stepped to the control panel. Infrared feeds came online, 3 figures moving low to the ground, tight against the auxiliary hallway wall. One was carrying something long, not a weapon, a biolocator. "Rail," I whispered, no need to shout. She was already standing, eyes glowing a deep violet tactical response mode. 3 targets, outer level. Rail nodded, heading for the weapons rack without a word. Zaina woke next, asking no questions. She simply clenched the old scar under her collar and exhaled deeply. "They're earlier than I expected," she said. "I think you were hoping they'd come," I replied. Myri sprang from the bed like a cat stirred mid-dream, dressed in under 4 seconds. I looked at them. 3 women, 3 warriors, 3 wolves. All ready to fight before I'd even spoken a plan. But before we could move, the internal radio crackled to life. The screen stayed black, just a distorted audio feed. Then a voice spoke. "1 man, 3 bonds. Legacy system still functioning. Impressive." Zaina stepped toward the console. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is, your blood has marked an outsider. That cannot be allowed to spread. The law forbids it. The council will not permit it." Rail growled low. "The council died with your ancestors." "Not yet," the voice chuckled, "but you soon will." I cut in. "If you think these 3 are easy to kill, you haven't seen them fight." A pause, then the laughter turned colder, darker. "Thorn Valor, Earthborn, scar on the left chest from a plasma blade, Lorvan battlefield. Record wiped from military archives, a man with no home, a wandering soul." His voice dropped lower. "But now you're the center of a power map. And I want my position back." Rail slammed her hand on the panel, sparks crackling from the screen. Zaina turned to me, voice sharp as a drawn blade. "That's Vernak, my half-brother. Exiled from our bloodline for betrayal, but clearly he's not dead." "And he knows about our bonding," I said. Myri shrugged, still toying with her sidearm like she was picking where the first bullet should go. "Good. If he wants to test whether my blood runs warm or cold, let him come." Zaina looked at me. "We have to leave. Head for the old clan contact point where he can't interfere directly." "Anyone else know where it is besides the 3 of you?" "No," Rail answered, "unless there's a traitor in the old network." I nodded. "Then we move now." We evacuated the base in under 6 minutes. No luggage. Just weapons, internal trackers, and a few biological supply capsules. Outside, the fog was as thick as a second skin, coating everything with the scent of ash and dead ions. Every step echoed with the crunch of fractured rock under low-pressure gravity. Zaina led. Rail followed close behind, eyes scanning in all directions. Myri stayed beside me, gaze fixed on the faint lights flickering far off in the mist. I took the rear, gun across my back, knife on my hip, and my heart beating faster than ever. Not from fear, but because I knew. From this moment on, I wasn't an outsider anymore. I was the central link. The wildcard that both ancient systems and power-hungry traitors wanted to own or erase. And my fight had only just begun. The journey to the Nexus wasn't long, but it sat like stone in my lungs. The path was saturated with ancient radiation, a kind of frequency that didn't kill instantly. It slowly wore down the biology of weaker species. To the 3 Zalari sisters, this place was ancestral. To me, it was a trial not of body, but of something deeper, will. The Nexus lay hidden in a deep fissure between 2 ancient tectonic folds compressed over millions of years. No satellite could scan it. No drone had ever entered. No map acknowledged it. It only revealed itself to those who once carried Zalari blood or had been chosen by it. When we arrived, I understood why. The entire cavern glowed with a dim green-blue light emanating from the living stone walls. They weren't stone, they were biomineral structures, like the fossilized spine of some colossal being that had slumbered for centuries. Rael was the first to step onto the altar. She said nothing, didn't look back. She placed her hand on the central stone column and closed her eyes. Her blood, just a few drops, seeped into a thin groove. The wall lit up, cracks glowing brighter, revealing a round chamber with no visible door. Zaina followed. Then Myri. Finally, it was my turn. I moved to step inside, but Rael raised a hand to stop me. You can only enter if you're willing to complete it. I looked at all three. Complete what? Zaina stepped forward, her silver eyes catching the light like a blade beneath water. A blood bond is not just touch, not just sex, not just protection. It is surrender. You've walked through each of us. But only when you touch the core and let the Nexus see, can the bond seal. And if I don't, the bond shatters, and our blood will rise to erase that stain. I swallowed hard. Rael said, we won't kill you, our lineage will. Myri shrugged, still playful. To sum it up, either go in and become ours forever, or walk away and be nothing to us ever again. I exhaled and stepped toward the altar. The core stood waist-high, matte gray, with spiral grooves like fossilized DNA. I placed my hand upon it. It was warm, then hot, then flowing. I watched my blood seep into the grooves, joining three existing veins: silver from Zaina, violet from Rael, amber from Myri. I had never felt so unlike myself. The chamber flared with blinding light, like a nuclear blast folded inwards. I was thrown back, but I didn't fall. My body floated, layers of me tearing apart, and those pieces were grafted back together with them. Zaina, her presence weighed like duty. Rael, her pulse marched into my veins like rhythm in battle. Myri, her whisper softened the armor of my will. I saw them, their memories, their scars. Every touch from the past they had never shown to anyone, and I took them all, without flinching. When the light died, I was lying in the center of the chamber, my body soaked in sweat, breath caught in my throat. They stood around me. One by one, each stepped forward, placing a hand on my chest. Zaina spoke, now you belong to us. Rael followed, and we will never let anyone else have you. Myri leaned close, whispering, to the end, whether fire burns or blood flows. I didn't nod, didn't resist. I just opened my arms, wrapped them around all three, and let my heartbeat speak what words could never capture. The pulse of the Nexus still echoed faintly in my chest as the four of us stepped out from beneath the sacred dome. Though the light had faded, I could still feel the resonance threading through my muscles, as if my blood was no longer mine alone. The three women beside me were no longer just lovers. They were pieces of a greater body. A living biological entity preparing for its final war. The atmosphere outside had shifted. No more mist, no more wind, not even sound, as if the world was holding its breath. And then the signal came. Not through satellites, not through radio, but directly into Zaina's mind. She froze, her whole body turning to stone. Her hands clenched so tight her nails pierced her palms and drew blood. What is it? I asked, stepping close. She turned to me, her silver eyes hazed not from fear but something else. Anger, betrayal, or a wound never healed. Vernak, she whispered. He didn't come alone. Rael's grip tightened around her blade. Explain. Zaina stepped back, her voice nearly cracking. He brought someone with him, Carol. Rael halted mid-step. Even Myri stiffened. I looked between them. Who's Carol? Zaina turned to me, and for the first time her eyes were bare. He was the one I was promised to, before you appeared. I said nothing. Rael scoffed. He used to be a mirror in the shrine. Now he's just a rusted dagger. Zaina nodded slowly. He couldn't accept being replaced. And now he's helping Vernak access the royal genome data. He has clearance to the bloodline archives. Myri stepped back, alarmed. He could locate the Nexus origin. I stared at all three, and if they reach the core before us, we'll be erased, Zaina said like a blade slicing air. No lineage, no bond, no reason to exist. Silence froze the air. I tightened the strap on my rifle. Then we have to get there first and stop them. Rail came beside me, not just stop, end them. Zaina's voice was steady now. The core lies beneath the planet's third tectonic layer. To reach it, we must pass through the Gate of Blood. I nodded. Where are they now? Myri glanced at the wrist hollow. They've passed the first layer, 3 hours from the core. I clenched my teeth. Then we move now. We didn't rest. The path to the Blood Gate was not made for the weak. The air reeked of scorched iron. Each stone wall along the descent reflected memory, living memory. They showed what you least wanted to face. I saw myself on Lorvin, among orphaned children I'd failed to save. Rael saw her father beheaded for refusing to kneel. Zaina saw herself, stripped of title by the council for refusing to marry Carol. Only Myri walked as if the illusions didn't matter. I asked her why. She smiled. I've already given up every image. I only keep one now, you. When we reached the Blood Gate, my hand bled on its own. No wound, just a slow drop from my palm into the stone crevice, and the massive door opened soundless like it had simply accepted. Inside, ozone, crimson light, and footsteps echoing ahead. No time to set up an ambush. No chance to strike first. When we entered the core's chamber, Vernak was already there. And beside him, Carol, his gaze void as if he'd never known love at all. Vernak turned, his gold eyes rotting like spoiled blood. Perfect timing. I needed to witness your erasure. Carol looked at me, cold, silent. Zaina inhaled. You can kill me, Carol, but I've chosen not to live in chains. Carol closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then raised his gun, aimed at me. Rael moved first. The shot rang out. No screams, just blood. And when the smoke cleared, I was still standing. Carol lay on the ground, eyes wide open, staring at Zaina as if seeing her for the first time. Vernak screamed, but before I could move, Zaina had drawn her heritage blade and hurled it into his throat. Everything ended in 10 seconds. Rael dropped to her knees, panting. Myri touched my arm gently. Now we have the right to exist. I looked at them, not as a lover, not even as a comrade, but as an inseparable part of a living bloodline, one now named forever. News traveled faster than any gunshot I'd ever seen. Less than 24 hours after Vernak fell in the core chamber, encrypted streams from the ancient biosystem had already reached central satellites. The rogue bloodline was erased, the bonded system restored, and a summons was issued to the entire Zalari Legacy Council. Thorn Veiler, a human, was listed under a new category, genetic convergent entity, not royal, not alien, simply chosen by the blood. There had never been anything like it. Zaina didn't hide me. Rael didn't veil her pride. Myri, it was like she had waited her whole life for this moment. None of them backed away. We boarded a wide-winged relic-class vessel. No cloaking, no encryption, no hidden signals. We flew straight to Zaldaras, the capital world, where the council hall lay suspended between 3 suns. Their light poured across the skies like molten blades forged in gold. When our ship landed, a crowd was already waiting. No cheering, no boos, just silence. And eyes. I stepped out first, no armor, no weapon. Zaina at my side, wearing a ceremonial robe silver like burnt starlight. Rael behind, one hand on her sword hilt just enough to say, "We're ready if you are." Myri walked slow beside me, half smiling, never blinking as she tracked the floating cameras overhead. Inside the grand hall, not a whisper, until a voice rang out from the topmost row. "You are human." I raised my head, Counselor Varath, as old as stone, his face carved with disdain. "Yes, I didn't flinch. You are not Zalari." "But I never claimed to be. You hold no ancient gene, no title, no tribute." I lifted my chin higher. "But I carry their blood on my hands, on my lips, and in my heart." A murmur spread, some heads lifted, others lowered. Zaina stepped forward, her voice stronger than any right ever spoken. "We did not choose tradition, we chose survival." Rael added, "We're not against the system, we are the new system." Then Myri, soft but unshakable, "If love is a crime, then let our blood bear it. But no one has the right to call it wrong." I turned to them, nodded once, then faced the council again. "You fear me, not because I'm powerful, but because I never bowed, because I was chosen without your permission." I pulled out a small ceremonial blade, the one Zaina once carried. I placed it on the council table and sliced a line across my palm, letting my blood drip onto the sacred stone. "This blood is real, willingly given, no coercion, no fabrication." Silence again. Then a voice called out from deep in the hall, not loud, but clear as crystal, "You're no longer just human." I turned, a young council member, female, eyes blue like polar seas. "You are either our hope or our undoing, but that we will learn to accept." I didn't smile, but my chest eased. That day, across every transmission grid in Zaldaras, the entire galaxy saw an image. A man with no royal mark, no sacred glory, standing beside three queens, unbowed, unshaken. The rest chamber deep within Zaldara's fortress wasn't large, but it was silent. No recording devices, no echoes, and no one else but us. The lights were dimmed low, the kind of soft glow like the gaze of someone who knows they'll never leave again. I stood before the mirror, shirtless, my arms still wrapped in bandages after the clash with the Guardians. My chest still ached, not from the wound, but from the weight of something I had never been taught how to prepare for. Zaina entered first. She wore no ceremonial robe, no silver armor. Only a thin layer of fabric like morning mist, draping along the curves of someone born to lead, but never seen without her defenses. Now she stood there, bare, with nothing left to hide. "You don't need to say anything," she whispered, stepping closer, her hand pressing against my chest. "Just let me be here this time as the one who arrives first." Then she kissed me, not quick, not hurried. A kiss that left a mark, as if her lips were writing my name on a torn-out page of an ancient book. When I pulled her close, she didn't resist. She exhaled against my neck, whispering, "When you chose to stay, I wasn't just saved, I was born again." Then came the sound of a door opening. Rael stepped in. She said nothing, didn't hesitate. She wore no armor either, just a deep crimson silk, the color of dried blood, something that concealed little and no longer needed to. She looked at me, then at Zaina, not like someone who arrived late, but as if this had long been agreed upon. "This time," Rael said, "I won't hold a sword, I'll hold you." She stepped forward, her hand brushing my shoulder, then sliding down my arm. Strong, precise, unafraid. When her lips touched my neck, Zaina didn't back away. They shared me, not with jealous glances, but with a wordless understanding. For the first time, I didn't have to choose, because they chose together. Then came Myri. She entered as gently as a dream brushing your cheek, wearing nothing but a sash loosely wrapped over one shoulder, half covering her chest, exposing one thigh. Her hair was tousled, her lips slightly flushed, and when she smiled, I forgot all pain. "My turn," she said. She didn't walk quickly, each step measured as if testing the emotional current in the room. But when she reached me, she breathed out a whisper, "No one gets to sleep with you unless I'm here too." All three stood around me. Each one placed a hand on a part of me. All three leaned in, skin against skin, breaths aligned. I didn't speak. My throat was tight, not from lust but from trust. I pulled all three of them into my arms, my hands wrapped around their waists. My face brushed Myri's neck. Zaina's hair grazed my cheek. Rael's chest pressed against my shoulder. Three women, one rhythm, no competition. No one asked for more. No one wanted exclusivity, because they all knew there was no me without them. I led them to the large bed in the center of the room. Zaina lay on my left, her arm wrapped across my chest like she was trying to pull the pain out of me. Rael lay on my right, one leg draped over my hip, her lips pressed to the scar along my ribs, as if saying, "I know where you've been hurt." Myri didn't lie down. She sat on my hips, leaned down, and touched her forehead to mine. Her eyes no longer playful. They were real, as if she finally saw this was no longer a game. "I never thought I mattered enough to be here," she whispered. I caressed her cheek and pulled her close. "You're not just important," I said. "You're the part that, without, I wouldn't be whole." And as her lips met mine, Zaina and Rael drew me deeper between them. Each kissed me in different places, neck, chest, ribs, shoulder, as if marking what once was theirs alone, now something shared. That night we didn't make love like people consumed by desire. We connected like veins once severed, now returning to a single heartbeat. No one screamed, no one rushed, only breath, only skin, only whispers filled with emotion. Each time I turned to one, the other two touched me. No one was forgotten, no one was less. There was only fullness. When exhaustion claimed us all, I lay between them. Sweat, breath, and heartbeats fused like the deepest chord I had ever known. Zaina rested her hand on my chest. Rael placed her head on my left shoulder. Myri wrapped herself around my waist from behind. No one needed to say anything more, because that night etched one truth: I was no longer the one chosen. I was the one who chose them all.